everyone. My name is Sheila Ram, and I am the executive editor of the Buffalo News. Today I'm here with Robert Gavin, Albany Bureau Chief for the News, and today we are going to talk about our coverage from the state capitol and how we look at stories and information from our elected officials. Today's video is part of a series of videos that I will do that will attempt to do two things. One, introduce you to some of the staff members and journalists of the Buffalo News, and to also share a little bit about how we make news decisions. So, Robert, let's talk a little bit about you. Hello.
Hello, happy to be here. Yeah.
And so, why don't we tell readers a little bit about you? For instance, you live in Albany. Why don't you give us a little of your background?
Sure. I'm happy to describe how I got here. So I'm originally from Staten Island. So that's the lowest southernmost county in New York State. Mm-hmm. And now I'm officially gone across the state. As I worked in the Hudson Valley, I went to the College of New Paltz, which was a SUNY school. Yeah. I worked in across the river. I worked in Albany for the last 2 decades. First as the Albany bureau chief for the Staten Island Advance, and then I also later worked at the Times-Union, where I worked right up until I started here, and I was working there almost 19 years, and now I go across the state very happily to be in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. At a very exciting time in state government. So that's my background. I've been in this business almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. I've been an editor, I've been a reporter most of the time, and I feel like I've come full circle. I'm back to covering the Capitol, and I'm very excited. I think this is a great city. It's a great news town. It's a great newspaper, and it's just I could not be happier than to be at the Buffalo News.
That's awesome. So did you start in May?
Started in May. I started May 28th, yeah.
May 28th, okay. Not that long ago, actually.
Yeah.
So what's your approach when you are selecting stories to report, and why? Tell me a little about that.
Yeah, I think there's a notion, I think, when people look at a story, and especially when you're in a competitive beat, most beats are competitive, but then you have, what's interesting about the state capitol is you have reporters that you're all working together, and you're all in competition technically, yet you're all not working on the same story. Mm-hmm. And it's very tough sometimes to get distracted in thinking, well, this person asked about this. Great example. Last week of session, so many people are asking about New York City-based congestion mm-hmm. pricing. Does it affect Western New York? There are impacts to a small extent, mm-hmm. but nothing that readers and, frankly, people in Western New York really have to worry about. So what I focused on when I had a chance to speak to the governor was what affects Buffalo, and those things included, money that could go to fund the city of Buffalo, whether it's the Seneca gambling casino compact, mm-hmm. whether it was the bed tax, which was part of the budget Mayor Byron Brown had introduced and was expected to be part of that budget, did not get the state approval mm-hmm. it needed. So that's where I focused on, and I think in general what I like to focus on in a story is, what can I do that people are going to take from this story and really, realize how it affects them? Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of stories out there that I think a lot of people will read, and I don't think anyone should feel bad about this, but there's a natural human tendency. You start reading a story, and if it doesn't affect you, if you're not invested in it, I'm going to go see what else. I think I'm going to go read the sports section. I'm going to go read the business section. When I go into this, I try to say, okay, what's the news? And it seems like a very basic question. What's the news hook here? What's something that people care about? This will affect their lives, and to let them know how it will affect their lives, because sometimes it isn't obvious at first.
Yeah. And that's key to our coverage overall of the news. I talk every day to the staff and to you about what key question or questions can you answer for readers. Now, when it comes to covering news in our state capitol, it would be easy to tell stories that, in my mind, are sort of inside baseball.
No question about it. Yeah.
So what's the hardest part about covering news from the Capitol?
I think it's just that avoiding the stories that are going to bring you somewhere that you really don't want to focus on. You want to focus on the subjects that matter to the area you're covering, which in this case is Western New York.
How how accessible have you found the officials that the Erie County and Niagara County residents have sent to Albany? Have you had a chance to meet sort of our delegates?
Yes, so one of the first things I did when I started here was I reached out via email and by phone to every single member of the Western New York delegation. I've met with just about every one of them, and and I've been happy to meet with them. They've been very forthcoming to me. They've been very welcoming, and I've basically let them know that my focus is to translate what happens here. And when I spoke to them in Albany, to where their constituents are, and to be able to work with them to say, hey, okay, what can you tell me? What's your reaction here to this? But also to know that we're here also to hold state government accountable. I mean, that's a huge part of our job as journalists, is to be able to see something and go, wait a minute, why did this happen this way? Why didn't this happen this way? And can you tell me why? And I think, I really look forward to being able to be a presence in Albany, to be able to have that sort of connection with the readers, so they can say, okay, well, if I want to know what's happening in Albany from my area, I'm going to look at the Buffalo News. I'm going to read this, and I'll be very, very happy to be able to have those answers before they even have to say, hey, what does this mean? Because it is tough. It's tough. I've been in this business almost 30 years, and there are times I will see something and I'll say, okay, what does this mean? And to not be afraid to ask a politician, okay, I'm sorry, why did you do this? Why didn't you do this? It's very tough. People will not always answer questions. You have to hold them down. And so I'm very excited about actually being here and being in a position. I'm not afraid to ask some of those tough questions, because at some point, we've all, as reporters, gone through the regrets of, I wish I asked this, I wish I asked that. Yeah. So at this point, I feel like I'm really excited to be in a situation where now I've have the experience to be able to ask the tough questions and do the tough stories.
Yeah. What's since you've been with us, what do you think has been your favorite story to tell so far? You've been pretty busy since you got to start.
No, I think one of the ones that really stuck with me was early on was on the bed tax, because you have a story that's on a tax which is part of the city of Buffalo's plan to actually raise money, and that fell apart. And it was a bill which I immediately noticed did not have a sponsor in the Senate, which tells you any bill that doesn't have a co-sponsor isn't going anywhere, and immediately tells you that that was a $4.2 million hole in the budget.
Robert, I'm looking forward to seeing the news that you bring us from our Capitol. And if you have a story suggestion, idea, or question, where can people email you?
They can email me at rgavin, that's rgavin @buffnews.com, and I'd be more than happy to hear from you.
Great. And of course, as always, you can email me at editor@buffnews.com. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for supporting local news.